it's 6 years that I've been researching and looking for the true truth and breaking down the narrative and figuring things out. And one of the things I have concluded is that if you, like me, have been trying to figure out whether to go on hormone therapy, what is going on with hormone therapy, what's real, what's not, and you're more confused than when you started out, I want to say something before we go any further, and that's that you're not dumb. I mean, I've been in the space for 6 years. I've interviewed more than 250 practitioners across the spectrum. I've regularly read the research. I've followed the money. I've tracked the influencers. I've been bamboozled. I've thought I need to be in hormone therapy. I need to be on hormone therapy yesterday. I don't know if I need to be on hormone therapy. I just feel like no one is incentivized to give you the full picture except me. And I'm not sure that I'm incentivized either, but I feel that this somehow is my mission without trying to sound too grandiose about it. I just became obsessed, and I'm kind of a person who has a pretty good hyperfocus, and this is what has happened. And when I was trying to figure out what to do, what product to make or sell, I finally last year started to think, I think you know enough about this to be able to sell a guide and help other people, because this is the number one thing that people are confused about. And the thing that always concerns me is that it's sold as this no-brainer, easy thing. And then I hear women going on hormone therapy and there's all this back and forth and all this confusion, and they have side effects, and then this doesn't work and that doesn't work. And of course, there's always those women. We see them in the comments on social media. It was the best thing I ever did. I'm going to die with that patch on. Great. That's the extreme end. There's a whole extreme end of people who've gone to the ER because they've had such a bad reaction. And then there's everyone in the middle. So I'm not here to tell stories. I mean, I tell stories, but I'm here to tell the truth. And narratives are sort of like a story about the truth, and the loudest voices win. So today I want to tell you what I found when I went looking for the truth and how long that's taken me and what I built as a result. So basically, I couldn't have talked about this until now. Like basically, I started talking about hormone therapy, but I've just had to spend 6 years learning about it and figuring this out. Because when you enter the space, you think, okay, I understand hormone therapy, but then I don't know how the average woman deals with it you have mainstream medicine in the middle, and that's a one-size-fits-all solution. There's a large commercial influence. You have people saying, no, it's all generics now and people don't make money, but there is a push to get people on hormone therapy. It's polarized. Like you have people who are estrogen maximalists and people who think estrogen is a really big problem. You've got different industries fighting each other, like the pharmaceutical industry and the compounding industry are direct competitors. And so a lot of the trash talk you'll hear about either side, I think, comes from them because, big businesses have money and they hire PR and marketing firms. And part of that is messaging to delegitimize their competitors. That happens all the time, everywhere. We have tremendous research gaps, and we hear about this all the time. I mean, there's 1/10 of the research on menopause that there is on pregnancy, and perimenopause is even less than menopause. There's a fraction on actual hormone therapy in perimenopause and menopause, less than hormone therapy in cows. I mean, that's just crazy. We have the medical education gap because leading the charge has been OBGYNs, but a lot of people feel like they shouldn't be leading the charge, even though they're doing a good job of getting the word out there, but they're surgeons. And neither they or family doctors, who are kind of the front line for women, spent much time learning about menopause. And, I'm hearing all the time of women who their doctors just aren't cluing in that it's probably the beginning of perimenopause. And there's so many other things, right? But I'm not going to get into all of them. But what this leads to is a woman in the middle of one of the most intense transitions of her life, trying to make a very, very important decision and kind of in the crossfire. And what I realized was everyone acts like they have the whole picture, but I think everyone just has pieces of the puzzle. Very few people have the whole picture. So what I've done is I started tracking. And what I've tracked is that there are at least, what I've counted so far, 12 belief systems or modalities when it comes to hormone therapy. So this is a centerpiece of this episode and also of my new Hot Truth About Hormone Therapy guide. So I'm not going to give you a lecture or whatever, but there's 12 distinct approaches. And in the middle, I've mapped it out as a wheel in the guide. In the middle is mainstream medical menopause. This is like the standard of care. It's focused on estrogen. It's evidence-based, meaning, it's based on randomized clinical trials, guiding bodies, sort of like give guidance on what should be done. It's what most doctors will adhere to. It's very slow to change. And it's basically the lowest dose for the shortest amount of time. And then you kind of get into, like, I have a wheel. So you kind of get into like hormone maxing. And I haven't dove so deep into this, but I do give you like an overview that there are people injecting testosterone and estrogen 3 times a week and saying they're having incredible results. And the evidence behind this is a little more sketchy, obviously, but it's out there and it's happening. And there are vocal people on social media. And then next to that, there's a rhythmic physiologic dosing, which is using either compounded or mass-produced hormones. The idea of hormone maxing and rhythmic physiologic dosing, which are the 2 most extreme pro-hormone belief systems that I found, that you were the most healthy in your 20s. So why don't you return your hormones to that level and just be super healthy? And that they sort of argue. I had Dr. Felice Gersh on my podcast, and I would go back and listen to that episode because she's a real disruptor. And they're sort of arguing that this idea that you just give a whiff of hormones, just a touch of what a woman had when she was in her reproductive era, makes no logical sense. And so, of course, they're disruptors because they're going against the entire evidence base and the entire mainstream medical menopause approach. So it's very confusing. Imagine if you're on a patch and then you come across one of these women saying it's stupid to have a low dose of hormones. That's very jarring. We have a lot of people using progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone, that stack. They're sort of calling it PET. They're using mass-produced estradiol, usually oral micronized progesterone, and testosterone, usually off-label. This stack is what you'll see, like Dr. Mary Claire Haver and Tamsin Fidel, who's a journalist and influencer. Many, many people are on this PET stack. And then you'll get over into what I think is the future, which is precision and personalized medicine. And this is sort of custom protocols based on quite a lot of testing. Testing is a really big part of my hormone therapy guide because it's a really big contentious gap on, whether you test your blood, whether you test your tissues, whether you do the Dutch test, which some people say is a scam, but a lot of other people really use. It's a minefield. But precision and personalized medicine, which, like I said, I think is the future. And I actually think it's the most responsible way because it takes into account your genetics, your gut health, your methylation. If you have genetic variations and you have problems methylating hormones, it can be very tricky and risky to go on hormone therapy. And what's crazy is like most of the belief systems just sort of ignore this kind of testing, certainly the mainstream medical menopause. No one's asking if you have the MTHFR genetic variation, right? No one's giving you a DNA test. No one's checking really deeply into your gut health. They're just prescribing hormone therapy. So as the wheel kind of goes around to the right, so we start out, we start out in the top left with hormone maxing. Now we're over to sort of the top right. And then you get into precision and personalized medicine plus. So that's like longevity stacking, right? This is like peptides and GLP-1s and all sorts of other interesting things that people are doing, almost like a biohacking, almost like hormone therapy, but in a biohacking way. And I think that is probably really forward thinking too. But the problem is a lot of these are out of our reach financially, right? We're still in really bullish on estrogen, although the precision and personalized medicine, some people recognize, like there's one doctor that I really like on social media, and she talks a lot about how she never prescribes estrogen in perimenopause. She thinks high estrogen is a problem unopposed by progesterone. And that gets made fun of all the time in mainstream medicine, people who won't prescribe estrogen in perimenopause. But a lot of the more forward-thinking doctors, integrative naturopaths, they have always been progesterone forward. Progesterone forward prescribing is also a big part of this guide, the insane focus on estrogen over our other hormones. But anyway, so we're getting into like, maybe estrogen isn't all that. And there is a group, and I put it in the belief system because it's very strong, phytoestrogens, the belief that food and botanical approaches, there's real evidence for this, that you can eat foods that are phytoestrogens that interact with your body and your receptors and can really impact your symptoms. And one of those people that I interviewed was Dr. Neil Bernard. He's done clinical trials on eating half a cup of soybeans a day and with phenomenal results, getting rid of hot flashes, with great success. So, I personally have experimented with phytoestrogens. I'm very, very sensitive, and I have reacted to them strongly, not in a great way. I don't react to estrogen in a great way. And I have actually, this is just an N of one, just anecdotal, but I've actually reacted strongly and poorly. So then we get sort of into, we're moving away from like estrogen, like Marsha from the Brady Bunch, into progesterone forward. So these practitioners, naturopathic doctors, integrative, they're forward thinking and they understand that progesterone is the first hormone that starts to drop. And it's linked to, our problems with mood, anxiety, poor sleep. Those are very common in the early stages of perimenopause and even in the preceding late reproductive stage, even when our periods haven't changed, even when we're not having a hot flash. This is what can happen. And then stemming on from the progesterone forward, you have the bioenergetic crew. They're really into metabolic health. Really, their explanation for what's going on in perimenopause doesn't have a lot to do with your hormones. They do believe in progesterone as supporting and being very healthy. This is kind of based on the work of the late Dr. Ray Peat. And they believe that estrogen is a pretty big problem, that it's actually inflammatory. And, I really respect the people in this space, bioenergetic space, but they're very, just like a lot of people in these belief systems, they really defend their beliefs. And I have seen friends who've gone on estrogen and progesterone and done really well. So I don't take any sides in this. I'm just presenting it to you. But sometimes there's a tribalism among these belief systems, and that's part of the problem. So what really makes me laugh is that you start out with people who are injecting like estrogen 3 times a week without a care to the world. Obviously, they're pairing it with progesterone to protect their uterus. Then you have like this estrogen-free community where they don't even eat phytoestrogens. Like they wouldn't even eat chickpeas or flax seeds or soybeans because they think that estrogen is so inflammatory and it's so the precursor of disease that they steer completely clear of it. There's a woman named Wendy Sellens. I'm not saying she's correct, but she's written a lot and she's pretty vocal and she's also compelling. So she's out there and there is this camp. And then we get into sort of hormones aren't required, like there's so many people now saying this isn't really a hormonal system, a hormonal problem. Yes, it's kicked off when your hormones recede, but really it's a cardiometabolic issue. Your metabolic health isn't quite right. And if you can get that sorted out in a variety of ways, then you can go into health. Now, increasingly, that's kind of like a peptides chorus. So of course, it always has to be something. But people who say you don't need hormones to get through perimenopause and menopause, you've got traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, homeopathy, traditional Arabic and Islamic medicine. You've got all these modalities that balance women out, and women do really, really well with them. I'm someone who had homeopathy, and there's loads of evidence for this too. So anyway, that's the, hot flashing hormone therapy belief ecosystem that I've mapped out painstakingly. No wonder it doesn't make sense. No wonder it doesn't make sense. You've gone and got a patch and some oral bioidentical progesterone, and then you turn on a woman who says you shouldn't even eat a chickpea. And then you turn on a woman who says you shouldn't be taking estrogen in perimenopause, but you're smack dab in the middle of perimenopause, So it's way too much. Anyway, about 2 years ago, I started turning this all into something I could actually give someone because I felt really helpless. Like, what are these little fragments of information I'm providing in newsletters and on social media posts actually doing? And I was still learning about it too. But anyway, what women need is a sort of a map, the lay of the land. Like before you decide anything, you need to know what you're deciding between. And I think if you can figure all this stuff out and I explain it all, then you can have the sovereignty to decide. So how it goes is I have a level 1 and I'm telling you everything, like what you need to know, like belief systems, what's actually happening in your body. Level 2, I explain what hormone therapy actually is, what the hormones do, where the evidence starts and ends. And I always include human experience and expert opinion because those take things further, right? Level 3 is 13 things your average doctor might know. 13 things your average doctor might not know. And this is this crazy space where you see big doctors using progesterone and progestin interchangeably. You get doctors prescribing the IUD or the pill for perimenopause. I mean, it's really something. Level 4 is where I lay out this ecosystem that I just told you about, all 12 approaches named in maps with their strengths and gaps. And level 5, I aim to answer 13 of the big questions just as honestly as I can, about side effects and risks and breast cancer and testing and timing and whether you really need it at all. So I want to be very clear about what this is not. It is not medical advice. Nothing I say is ever medical advice. And it's not a push toward or away from hormone therapy. It's not aligned with any camp. I never have been. And if you listen to me, you know that. It does not tell you what to do. What it does is give you what I wish I'd had when I was sitting in my doctor's office in my late 40s, kind of nodding along when I should have been asking questions, just feeling stupid. It gives you the information to be the CEO, the journalist, and the scientist of your own health. And there's even a bonus where I give you tips on how to talk to your doctor and extract the information you need using my journalism background. And being able to handle silences really helps with that. So this guide is for anyone who needs to understand something before she decides. If you're tired of being pushed in one direction with its simplistic information, if you have a good nose for when something is being oversimplified or oversold to you, but you don't know enough to like push back, it's also for practitioners, open-minded doctors and coaches, nutritionists, trainers, physiotherapists. All those people are confused too. And they don't have the time. They're out there working. They don't have the time to understand the full spectrum of what their patients and clients are navigating. So with this, they'll have a much more complete picture to be able to listen and respond. And, it's for any woman who's ever been told, just start hormone therapy, or no, I'm not going to give you hormone therapy. And then has just sort of thought, I need to know more about this, but I don't know who to ask. It's called The Hot Truth About Hormone Therapy, a journalist's no BS guide to the lay of the land. It takes under 3 hours because I don't think every section is going to be relevant for you. There's 5 videos, 5 PDFs, and then, like I said, there's a bonus. And it launches on June 15th. It's $47. It's so much work distilled down. All of the sources are there. So if you want to do more research, you can. The link will be in the show notes and the bio to pre-order. And please, if this episode resonated, I'd just like you to share it with someone who's in the thick of this, who's confused, who wants to understand her own body, who wants to understand what people are saying about her body. Oh, there's one more thing. I've been building this platform for 6 years without a product. The reason I waited is I just wasn't ready. I just couldn't write about it before I was ready. I feel like this is the perfect time. And the last year, particularly while this took shape, is when I was ready. I had to study this for at least 5 years to be able to wrap my head around it. So I need to serve the woman in the middle of the confusion. I need to serve the woman that I was and the women that I know and I hear about. I want to give you the information that you need, and I hope that you need it. So I think this is that thing. So this is dropping Monday, June 15th. You can pre-order it at any time, starting from when this podcast drops, and find out more about it in the show notes.